Well, I don't know where to begin. I can't believe it's me. Thank you all. Thank you, Dennis, everyone. I am deeply, deeply appreciative of this moment. It's unbelievable. I can't believe it all. But I thank you all. I thank WPI. I thank everybody. It hasn't been my doing. It's been a lot of people who work with me, encourage me, and help me through all these many adventures. As Bob said, I did not intend to go into engineering and science, although I liked them. When I was a kid one time, I learned how to make gunpowder. Very easy, I could tell you, but I don't think I better. I put it in coffee cans, sealed them up. I thought it was a terrible waste of time to go out with a simple little hook with worms on it to wait for a fish. So I know exactly what it was. It's stuff you can get anywhere, saltpeter, things like that. And I put them all together, put them in a can, put a little picture wire into it, isolate it with some, little wax, put a can around it, put a string around it, full of worms, hang it at a fishing pole. And you see a big fish come up, you see one you like, you push the button, boom, scoop up. And one night, I was coming out with a little friend of mine who eventually became a Franciscan monk. I didn't. And we went fishing. We caught big fish. Because you could pick the fish you wanted, got it. So with that, my father said, what, going fishing? I said, yeah. He said, what's that? Oh, I said, that's our fishing lure. He said, that doesn't look like a fishing lure. He looked, he said, I told him what was in it. It was no secret. I thought it's the way you did it. He said, my God, that's gunpowder. And he said, you're not going fishing with that. That's called dynamiting fish. That's against the law. You can't do that. Well, times change. Years later, I was employed by General Electric Company in Pittsfield at the Naval Ordnance Plant and making weapons of huge mass destruction and was paid for it. So times change. But I had at WPI a wonderful, wonderful, happy, very challenging career. And on the whole, I've enjoyed every minute of it. There were some I didn't, but there were many, many I did. When I heard this award, one of you, I remember who was there with this little kid next to me, said he was getting the Goat's Head Award. And just to give you a sense of humility, he said, are they going to give you a bag to put it in? So, you never know. But it's been a great career here. And there have been many, many changes. When I came, as Bob said, I came in the Navy V-12. If you got in that program, you could get your degree. It was a very accelerated program. And WPI, with President was Admiral Calvarius, got one of these units. And it was a very challenge. You were on full active duty. And you reveille 6 in the morning, lights out at 10 o'clock. If you're studying under the blankets with your flashlight, you got demerits, and instead of getting off Saturday afternoon, you walked around with a rifle on the quad out here. It was that kind of thing. It was a very, very rigorous program. But we got our degree in 3 years, full degree. It was a first-class degree. It was conducted, the Navy was absolutely convinced we'd beat the Japanese, we'd beat the Russians, but we would fight the Russians after we beat the Japanese and Germans. And so they were preparing for the next war. So we graduated full degrees, excellent degree program. It's the same in all the 20 units throughout the United States, of which we were one. And it's a first-class program, very, very intense. We graduated in 3 years. We got 1 week vacation every year between Christmas and New Year. You got 1 week to go home. The rest of the time, we'll work, work, work. Graduated in 3 years. And then we went to the Pacific. And I was on a destroyer as an electronics officer. We were to be in the invasion of Japan on December that year. And none of us thought we'd make it. They were predicting 1 million casualties on each side. And historians today say that was about right. And it was weird to live that way. We never thought we'd see home again. Never thought I'd see our parents again. Never thought I'd see the East Coast. And we drilled and drilled for the invasion of Japan. And then Hiroshima disappeared. About a week or two later, Nagasaki disappeared. And despite the suicidal, ferocious objectives of the admirals and generals of the Japanese military, Emperor Hirohito surrendered the Empire of Japan to the British and American forces. And Douglas MacArthur took over as Empire of Japan and ran it through the emperor. Very brilliant person. So I got out of that one. And I came back to WPI. I got a master's degree. Got recalled in the Korean War, but lucked out again and went to the Mediterranean. So, I look back now and look at my career at WPI, and I realize what that naval experience was. It was my IQP. It really, all the things we hoped to accomplish in the IQP were accomplished in those 2 tours of naval duty. All kinds of wild and wonderful things I never thought I could do. I did. And that's essentially what the IQP does. It gives you a sense beyond the classroom of doing something you didn't think you could ever possibly do. Not every IQP does that, but a hell of a lot of them do. And that, I think, is a big boom to WPI education. We had a lot of wonderful things happen here at WPI. And when I came back again, I got recalled again, the Korean War, and I went to the Mediterranean and lucked out. But I came back again. I never say no to WPI. And I then stayed here for the rest of my life. And it's been quite a ride. WPI, like many of the science and engineering colleges of that era, were very, very rigid. And WPI was right on top of them. Everything was dictated, every course, every grade. It was really pretty awful. But we lived through it, and somehow it was a good education, but not a great education. And I guess as a result of my IQP, all this Navy stuff, I began to realize there's so many more dimensions to life than I saw in the academic community. What was the answer? Is to bring some of the elements of that life into the academic community, which is exactly what I spent most of my life trying to do. And I don't know whether any of you are familiar with the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. Well, the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve says if you've learned something under duress and that pressure goes off, your memory retention goes to hell. You don't remember it. If you like something, you remember it a long, long time. But if you learn it under duress, therefore, what you learn to pass a final exam of some kind, when that exam is passed, that material's gone from your brain. It's really diminished, gone to hell. So that's why I started a huge program to eliminate final exams. And we have final exams to graduate. We don't have them anymore. Eliminate them, all gone. What have we got in place? You got to do something to qualify. Because ABET went crazy when we did that. It's our accrediting board. They went absolutely crazy. But we said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to have qualifying projects. You want to show you can do something. And boy, does that turn it around. And that's what we have now. And we went beyond that. We have the typical graduate thesis kind of qualification where you have to show what you can do with what you learn. We did it now in the qualifying project, the major qualifying project, where you have to explain what it was you did and demonstrate you learned something and can use it. So the MQP is a fixture now, an important fixture in a WPI education. But we went beyond that because they realized that engineers developed this country between World War I and World War II. Think back. Engineers decided where the roads went, the railroads went, where the dams were built, where the power lines went. Engineers developed this country. With World War II, the engineers got involved in competition with the Japanese, who were far ahead of us in electronics. Antenna developed, Yagi antennas, so way ahead of the United States. We were way behind. Germans were way ahead of control theory, a lot of things. We had a big catch-up to do, and we did. We certainly did. But in the process, engineers left the political scene and became the people who developed the technology that won World War II. I don't think people realize it changed the role of engineers. But what happened afterwards? The lawyers, people like that, took over with the politicians the control of the country, where the engineers lost it. And so we wanted to, in the development of the WPI plan, return engineers to the rightful positions of the makers of national policy. And we are doing it with the IQP, because every student from WPI for the last number of years must pass not only their professionally oriented science and engineering project, but also to solve a problem at the interface between science and technology on one hand, and social concern and human values on the other, which we call the IQP. And that's become a powerful, increasingly powerful influence on the futures of our graduates. So you do both of these things from WPI, and you get your degree. The results are growing steadily in their results and in what we are accomplishing. The people who were involved in this are many. When I came back, WPI, like most engineering colleges, is the most rigid curriculum in the world. There was no variation for any reason. You had to pass a course, boop, you're gone. And there was no ifs, ands, or buts. That's what you did. And it didn't seem right, because people have different interests, different talents. Why not accommodate them? And so we started to change that. And as a result, we have a much more flexible approach to our grading system, to what we did, and we opened it up. And WPI still has a strict grading system, but it is much more understanding of people's desires, people's hopes. But their qualifications are still an absolute. They must qualify to graduate. And so we have the graduation requirements, the IQP, the MQP. So each project is a half a year, full-time. It could be done in teams. It could be done in Worcester. It could be done on campus. But we encourage most of them to be done on campus, and right now we have 35 centers located on every continent in the world. In fact, we just opened one in Moscow, I think last week or so. And we are everywhere, New Zealand, everywhere you can think of. There are WPI centers, run, operated, and advised by WPI faculty. One of my big concerns was where in hell are we going to get faculty to leave their wives and little children and go off to Auckland, New Zealand to revise a project? But it's happening, and people are going. We found out ways of making it work. And with your help, we've even found out ways of paying for it. Thank you. And we hope we continue. But this is the program we have at WPI. For me, it's been an enormous experience to do it. We've had some very good leaders. One person who we got in WPI was a very rigid, just heartless community almost. But one of the people who brought it around, who I think was not recognized to nearly the portion he should be, was Harry Stork. If any of you have been to Vienna, you know Harry Stork. There's a big placard. I happened to see it on a bus while I was there once. And I went and looked at it. I still have to read a book about how he did it. But in the Yalta Agreement, which is a disaster, at least Austria got under the United States. Roosevelt was there, and he was celebrating his release with his bottle, and it wasn't very effective. Roosevelt was very sick and dying at that point. And it was really run by Stalin. But somehow the United States got Austria. And Lieutenant General Harry Stork was the commanding general. And somehow, while all these countries, Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, were all falling to the communists, Austria stayed with the West. And so he was the guy who did it. There's a big plaque to him. He became the next president of WPI, and he was a great president. I never thought he got the credit he should have for what he did in bringing along WPI. He came to WPI, and he once said at a faculty meeting, "You don't know it, but WPI is a gem, and it has an enormous future if we learn how to use it right." And he did. And he's the one who one time caught a retreat. I must tell you, the college was run by the president, absolutely. Sorry, he didn't have any noise from the faculty, you know. But in the process, it was absolute. He had 4 department heads, all engineering, electrical, mechanical, civil, and chemical. The president in these 4. There were other department heads, but he didn't count. They formed the executive committee, and they ran it with an iron hand. It was fun. Must have been great. But it was hell out of faculty. It's source of endless revolutions, but they didn't do that. But when Stork came, he wanted to change it. He could see this was an untenable situation. It was also the time of revolutions. For example, Clark University invaded a WPI faculty meeting, threw inkwells around. It was tight. Holy Cross had burned down the ROTC building. You know, it was that era. It was a terrible time. WPI was quiet, but there were a lot of steam building. Every Friday afternoon, it was particularly the rabble-rousing departments, electrical, chemical, and some elements, not all, of mechanical engineering, met at Bigelow's Tavern and planned the revolution. And it came. And I was there. So it was a very, very fascinating period. It was a period of enormous turbulence. But WPI had relatively quiet. But during it, we changed the school. We started things in motion. And with Stark's assistance, we made it happen. He started the revolution. And one day, things were getting very, very tense. He called me in and he asked me if I would be chairman of a curriculum committee to revise the freshman and sophomore programs, which had the same degree requirements in 1936 they had in 1836 when the college was founded. Exactly the same. Nothing was changed. So I got the job of changing it. Oh, it was quite a, but I had a load of support. The mechanical engineering department was very reluctant because they had a requirement established in 1836, still in existence in 1946, that every single student had to spend 14 hours a week drafting. And they said in Worcester, WPI students, you can always tell, they always have the T-square and triangle with them walking through the street. And it was a terrible waste. The world was passing us by. So he called me in, because I was a very loud rabble-rouser, and said, I'd like to appoint you chairman of a freshman sophomore curriculum committee to revise the curriculum, which meant, of course, getting rid of drafting. And but we had 12 or 13 professors whose only job was to teach drafting, and they weren't qualified to teach anything else. That was a problem in the ME department. Also, there was the president and 4 department heads, which called the executive committee of the faculty. So they made all the faculty had meetings. There was one guy, Carl Meyer, of the civil department, who used to get up and question him. They thought he was really risking his career. They even questioned him because there was no tenure. The faculty department heads did fire people who spoke back to them. It was a reign of terror, but we spoke back to them. And so President Stark appointed me chairman of the curriculum committee to change the freshman sophomore curriculum, which meant get rid of drafting. And wow, what a ride that was. And we did it. And it was a very close vote because the executive committee of the faculty hated it. So before this, Stark called a meeting down at Old Sturbridge Village, a retreat, with the department heads, the executive committee, to say, what are we going to do about the WPI curriculum? They talked and talked. They came back to him, and he said, things are just about as fine as they can be. So he said, okay. He told Dean Price, tell them to enjoy their breakfast and go back to their office and start working. The retreat is over. And that's when he appointed me to be the chairman of a new curriculum, which did not report to the executive committee more, reported directly to the whole faculty and to him, by way of him. And that's what we did, and we changed, got rid of all of these old programs and changed. That started the whole change that brought about what we've seen today. That's a little bit behind the scenes. But it was quite a wild ride. And I must say, as we got going, the last thing that Stork did was appoint the planning committee. And he appointed Bill Shipman, chemical engineering, as the chairman. Brilliant guy. A Marine colonel in World War II, brilliant colonel, highly decorated, brilliant guy. And he was chairman of the committee. I wasn't on it the first month. I got on the second month. It lasted several years. And the other person who got a late start on it was Romeo Maruzzi, who was another EE. EE and chem engine were the source of the revolution. And he was working on tenure, which we were also getting. This is a state of a big exciting revolution. Nothing to do with the curriculum, we're just setting the groundwork. And with tenure, because at that time, department heads fired people for no reason, talked back to them, they fired them. There was no stability at all. It's awful. I don't know how I exhausted because I guess they were afraid of me because I spoke louder than they did or something. But at any rate, what they did, they fired people left and right. But Maruzzi and a bunch of faculty got working with the ACLU, other people, to start tenure. And we got some very strong support from trustees, people like Howard Freeman, very supportive. But we had other people, like Harry Stoddard, who was desperately opposed to tenure. And when it finally was passed, and it did, he stayed on the trustees for years more. He never, ever voted for a single faculty member to get tenure. They got it because the other trustees voted, but he never did. No matter what the qualification, he just was opposed to it because to some of the trustees, tenure had a smell of union. And Worcester was a very non-union city. And they didn't want it. So WPI was in some cases still in the Middle Ages, way long time. So it's a little bit of background of where we came from to where we are now. It's quite a change, believe me. And a lot of people really put their careers on the line with some of the attitudes that existed during those days. But there were many, many great people. And then people like Maruzzi and Bill Shipman was a genius. And then we got Harry Hazard, George Hazard. And he followed, he came to WPI primarily because of the planning committee. He came from Columbus, Ohio, and he said he was so intrigued by what the planning committee was like. He wanted to come here. He almost didn't come, incidentally, because his wife said, "I'm not going to go to Worcester, Massachusetts." You know why? Because they had dinner in the Worcester Club. And they were out showing him around. He came in the front door and went to dinner. His wife came with some other lady. They wouldn't let her in the front door of the Worcester Club. They had to go to the back door, crawl over the potato sacks, up the back stairs. And she said, "George, if you come here, you'll come without me." But he somehow persuaded her that maybe they work it out, and there were all kinds of apologies. But that was Worcester. It's the way things were. So we almost lost what was a very, very powerful influence in changing WPI to what it is today. It's an enormous change. So here we are. To wrap it up, where we are is, I am convinced, look at our project centers all over the world. Look at our students coming from all over the world. In fact, we have to keep them out. China, everyone would be here for that. So what we've done is create the groundwork, I think, of a new concept of science and engineering education, and it is working. We are now a coeducational institution. That is working, and working very, very well, thanks to Dennis and the others who've been working with it. And I think WPI is not just a great institution. If we can keep our track, we will be the leading undergraduate institution in the United States. We are already getting there. We won't be the largest, probably, but will be one of the most sought after. Our applications are soaring, placements are outstanding. In talking to employers, WPI graduates gets ahead of the curve, raises in promotions. Our graduates are very satisfied with the educations they've had. Our applications coming in, I forgot what it was this year, 72,000 or something. It's enormous. And if we keep our course, if we're able to hold on and keep with the kind of leadership we have now and the kind of support that you alumni have given us and I hope will continue to give us, I think WPI cannot be one of them, but be the leading undergraduate college of science and engineering in this country and keep moving in that. I'm serious about it. I'm not saying this just because I got to go there. I'm saying it because I goddamn well absolutely believe we are on the approach to lead this country in a new concept of science and engineering undergraduate education. I have talked only about science and engineering, but our humanities and other programs have done extremely under the same kind of thing. The participation of our humanities faculty in all our projects is extraordinary, as well as their own coursework. We're getting a full communications between all our departments. So WPI is on an enormously important track right now. So on behalf of all of us here on campus, I want to thank you all for your support. And me personally, thank you for the goat's head, even though I don't have a bag to take it home. Thank you.
We're going to cut it short, okay?
You get everything you need, right?
We have all been fortunate to know Bill, and it was a terrific night to have him here, and he is so deserving of this great honor. Thank you, Bill.